Yo, Michael, what's up? Welcome to the podcast.
What's good, bro?
What's good? We're gonna pretend like we didn't already try this.
Yeah.
As with anything,
Didn't.
man, you know there are definitely learning curves, especially when you're up in the production value. You're adding complications to it. So
Yeah.
we've certainly learned some shit this time around. But hey, man. What
This
can
is
you
a good
do?
setup, dude.
You live and you learn. I think we more or less have figured out how it needs to be shot moving forward. So
Yeah, man.
yeah, we're good.
You have to learn to live.
Definitely. And learn to love. It's important to learn to love people.
Learn to love.
Okay.
Learn to love everybody.
So, Michael,
What's up?
you're on here, and there's a couple things that I definitely wanted to talk to you about, and I think it'd be fun to philosophize over some of the things that we've both kind of talked about already before. And one of those was, I think, like just talking about how important like thoughts are and how easy it is to notice. Well, not easy, but like how possible it is to notice thought patterns and to break them and then to exchange negative ones with positive ones. I remember you were talking about anchoring and the whole concept of anchoring.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting. I'm not going to lie. When you told me Tony Robbins, my first thing is like,
Tony Robbins
Tony
is
Robbins,
the man, dude.
No, he's cool. But your inclination when you see like a motivational speaker who like that's their whole job is to be a motivational speaker, you're like, but what else are you doing other than motivationally speaking?
No, like that totally is like a realistic thing. Like there's a lot of people there that just like
There's
do
some
it.
Shysters that do it.
Yeah, man. There's
yeah.
some shoisters.
Some fucking shysters.
There's some shoisters out there.
It's
No,
true
seriously.
though. It's true.
But like his stuff is like it's like logical, and the resources like when he talks about like neuro conditioning and stuff like that, like those are like real things, you know, like scientifically like proven, you know, and experimented on, you know, like he has like legitimate things to say, and like also like for instance like when he describes things, you know, when he talks to people, he makes it very easy and convincing to understand simple things. So he's a good speaker. Yeah, man. I heard it in one of his.
He's definitely a good speaker.
In one of his CDs.
Well, so I ended up listening to it was a Tim Ferriss podcast, and he talked about Tony Robbins. I don't think he actually had Tony Robbins on, but he talked about him. And the way he talked about him, how he had the exact same reservations that I did when you were telling me about it.
I did too.
Yeah, made me feel better about him afterwards. Like after I heard that podcast, I was like, he seems like he actually is a good dude that genuinely just loves doing what he does.
Yeah.
And he genuinely helps people, and it's not as much as a scam as my initial thinking is on that kind of character.
Yeah, you know, like there have been some like people in the past, I won't name any names, you know, but some come to mind. And yeah, man. I think he's a legit dude.
No, for sure. So anyway, so you were talking about this concept of anchoring, and I thought it was interesting because it is like manipulating the mind. Like you're genuinely like fucking the mind a little bit based on exploiting its natural patterns of behavior through our evolution as creatures. And I thought that was such a cool idea because when I got into psychedelics, one of my favorite things that I discovered was realizing that, oh my God, like I can totally play this tool like a fucking tool.
Yeah.
Like it, you know, the sense of it being me made it seem like it wasn't something that you can like fuck with, but your mind is just an organ, just like any other organ. And you can actually fuck with this organ more than any other organ. Like it, and this controls everything else. So it ends up being this like catalyst of like, holy shit, if I can change this thought pattern and this behavior, then that's actually going to physiologically change my body.
Yeah, and your world.
And your world around you, because then you co-create your reality with your environment.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. So that was one of my most profound things that I learned from my first acid experience, and I felt like you had such a similar one, and you like reinvigorated my remembering of that lesson, because that lesson after a while became how I just naturally did things. That it became unconscious, which is good. It's good that I got it to the point of being unconscious, but every once in a while you need to almost remind yourself of that magic, because sometimes you'll even though you'll be unconsciously doing that in a lot of things, there are going to be other things that you're not doing it because you're no longer consciously thinking about it. So it's naturally ingrained in my fitness routine. It's naturally ingrained in my meditation, but it's not necessarily naturally ingrained in maybe some other like creative endeavors. And that's where then I needed to bring the consciousness back. And I brought back that attention. And since then, I've had so many ideas, and I've done so much more writing in these last couple weeks. And it's been awesome. And that was reinvigorated by your fucking trip, man. And I talk about it on the last podcast. You know, I mentioned how you kind of were like the catalyst to it. And then you told me that I was the catalyst to fucking your trip, which I think is hilarious. So and that right there proves the concept of the fucking feedback loop and how your environment can help reinforce certain things when you are consciously altering the environment to then reinforce those things.
Yeah, dude. Like, seriously, like, you know, it's cool how you said it. You know, like, I don't think it's almost like a dangerous thing to do when you're talking about like, you know, like breaking old patterns and like disabling old anchored associations to things or events or whatever. And like, I don't think it's like a dangerous mind fuck. I think it's more of like,
no, it's
like,
not dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I might have misunderstood what you meant by that.
No,
mind fucking yourself.
I don't think it's dangerous. I'm saying it's funny how you're exploiting this just genetic thing that like that's just how our brain evolved.
Well, it's like we're exploiting everything. Like when we're like walking on the street, you know, like you're exploiting this ground right now. So it's like we're literally like deliberately arranging things all the time, or arranging ourselves, you know, like in the middle of other things, in relation to other things. So it's like I think it's amazing. Like I think it's incredibly empowering when you say that you can actually like fuck with this thing and deliberately arrange it in such a way that it'll produce like
the results you want.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, like literally like set an intention. This is what I want. And you can then begin, it takes a while, but you can begin to reprogram your brain. And I think...
Yeah, your mind will grow, you know, massively.
Exactly. No, and I think it's essential too.
That's an inside joke, by the way.
It's an inside joke.
On our previous take, I said massively like 20 times in like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
It was funny. That's why it's funny now.
But what I think is really important with these practices is so like psychedelics are cool because they will take you so far outside of yourself that you will see things that just would take a long time for you to realize in other forms. It's not that it's impossible in other forms. It just is more difficult and will take longer.
Totally. I think with like practice though, like deliberate daily and like consistent, or at least like
but you still had a blind spot. So even though you had worked out a lot of stuff, you still had a blind spot that only 100%. Psychedelics could show you. And so that's why I'm saying the meditation is
like doing it the other way. It could have taken
part.
10 years.
Yeah,
you know?
no, for sure.
Or maybe a lot more failures. And I love failures. Like I learned so much shit from failures. I look for that shit all the time.
For sure.
But like, yeah, totally. Like I think it was just like a cool, you know, it's like a extra speed up button.
It is. It's a speed up, and then the meditation's essential for keeping the stability.
Yeah.
In order to maintain the foundation of this, you can't just build the roof. You know, you can know where the roof is going, but it's important to then build the foundation and build up the levels to the house.
True. And like I want to make like an important point as far as like, let's say reaching that same epiphany or revelation like through just completely natural way of meditating. I think I wouldn't say that like it would be impossible to reach those places. Yeah, like I think it always depends on the person. Yeah, it could be difficult,
or if the
person like is already arranged themselves or by accident or deliberately arranged their mind in such a way that they go through it faster. Like it could be different for everybody. And the intensity with which a person has to, I think, like, you know, make themselves kind of kick themselves in the ass to like go, you know, sit and clear their minds so they can become aware of what was in there. You know what I mean? Like it could be a different process for everybody, but I feel like there's like a huge like commonality with everybody. Like it brings huge clarity.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And then I almost said massively. That's why I'm laughing. Oh man, I love empowering words.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that was another thing too that we talked about was how language is so important, because your language shapes your reality. And this is something that Jason Silva introduced this idea to me, and then on subsequent psychedelic experiences that was like reinforced so heavily of like that the words I'm using to describe the world and describe my actions or how I feel about myself directly will create the reality that I perceive. And that perception ends up being how I then carry myself throughout the world. And if I'm carrying myself with a certain perception of the world, if it's a positive one, I'm more likely to find myself in positive scenarios simply by me bringing the positivity to the equation.
Yeah, and like as far as that stuff goes, that's what you start seeking, you know, and that. You know, like that starts bouncing back.
Asking you shall receive. Yeah,
You
end up like
it's
finding
like you're
those
expecting
things.
it.
Yes, because
You're like anticipating this stuff to happen, like on Christmas. Ooh, you know, I'm gonna get my present. Ooh, I can't wait. And then like even if they forget about your ass, you know, this Christmas, next Christmas maybe you'll get it. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And that's the thing is like changing the expectations of like when you expect things to happen, and rather just that, oh, it's gonna happen. And then it will happen when it happens. But if you just keep moving there.
Yeah, I think at that point, like there should be, and this is I think it's a difficult thing for people to practice because like, you know, they want the shit. You know what I mean? There's like, come on, let's go. Give me the booty, you know?
Yeah.
I want the cake. And like people will really benefit a lot from the art of allowance, you know, like literally learning the shit to happen. And I think I mentioned this in like our first podcast, kind of like trying to pick the fruit before the process inside the tree.
The mango tree.
Yeah, the mango tree story from Sadhguru's podcast. Like he was saying, like, he's like, if you bite the leaf, you know, hoping you're going to get the fruit, it's going to taste like, you know, it's going to taste nasty and bitter. So you have to literally understand that there's a process in the background too that sometimes you're mostly not aware of.
Yeah.
Like as far as like the tree growing and producing the fruit, all we know is it grows in the ground and we have to throw some water on it.
And that's it.
Or cow shit to fertilize it. That's all we know. Water and fertilizer. That's it.
And then the rest of it, it will take its own course. It's got its own natural process, and it will do it at the rate that it needs to in order to survive.
It has to be allowed, dude. It's important to allow things to happen. I feel like when we don't allow things to happen, let's say like today, you know, or however long in last year, let's say like a week, you know, you built up this like momentum, this massive desire. You're like, fuck yeah, I want this thing that I really desire. Like it could be a goal, you know what I mean? Like a fitness goal, or like I really want to get this girl. I'm so in love with her. Ooh, yeah. Or like, you know, I want to build this awesome set and do a video podcast now and like to expand my shit, to expand my operation. And then like in the process when like, let's say it's almost like you're trying too hard. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then in the process,
try to force it.
Yeah, like you're trying to force it to happen, and sometimes other things are not in place yet, and like outside of your knowledge, you know. So it's important to give it time, like all the time. Definitely. Otherwise, it literally, I think it almost is like a stick into the bicycle wheel. It literally kills that momentum, and then you have to waste all this time building that momentum up. But now you have all these like negative associations. Like that's like a bad anchor. Yeah, like if you think about it.
Definitely, and that's something that I've thought about when I started doing video with this. Is I'm like I could not have done this a year ago, even though I might have wanted to. And the fact that I took the time to just get the podcast going, figure out my flow, figure out how I'm supposed to fucking host this thing, and then start finding guests. Now that I have that, now I feel comfortable with bringing the video. And although this has not come without its challenges, because it certainly has, I feel like I've learned a lot from this one already. In terms of how I want to shoot it moving forward, where I need to position the cameras, the lights, all of that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's like going through the process. You gave yourself a chance to fail a little bit, and now you gained all this knowledge.
And I didn't have that pressure either, because I haven't released a podcast in like a month, and it's because I've like either been busy or family time. It's Thanksgiving, and then I have been sick. I've had a bunch of reasons on why I haven't been able to, and I did actually try recording another one with Joey, and there's nothing wrong with that podcast, honestly. But I was thinking about it in the context of the larger picture, and I was like, this podcast could be later, like this, just because of the topic. We do mention DMT, and we talk about DMT, and DMT is a really intimidating thing that either people don't know what it is, and so then they're going to be like eye rolling you, or they do know what it is, and it's like, oh, that's intense, like it immediately just gives you this like sense.
Yeah, I
right?
feel like a lot of people are becoming super curious about it now.
Yeah, DMT is certainly starting to pick up a little bit in the general consciousness, but most people, when you talk to them, will not know what that is. And you talked about your DMT experience, and now I feel like I can relate to it, by the way, because I was lucky enough to have a DMT experience. And that, man, that was like the craziest thing I've ever been through.
It's nuts, right?
Yeah, dude. That's
You're
like,
blasted off.
It's so weird, though. I felt like I was still in the room. But at the same time, I knew I was actually I was also in this other place. Like, really, most of my consciousness was in this other place, but I could feel my body on the couch that I was laying on. You know, I knew I was in my studio, but I didn't. I wasn't.
It feels like you're astral projecting. Or
yeah,
something.
I like wasn't worried about it. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm laying here, but like that's not what I'm thinking. This shit's fucking amazing.
Yeah,
and
dude.
I'm looking at these beautiful fractals of literally like every color you could ever imagine, all put into one. For me, I saw a lot of, no coincidence, with the art piece to the right of us, which unfortunately I don't have a camera angle looking at, but the colors of like purple, black, green, like it was like all of these colors morphing into each other. It was these crazy fractals and shapes that seemed impossible. To me, it had a vibe of like they moved like tentacles, but it was like the smoothness of toothpaste on your toothbrush.
Yeah. Those shapes are weird.
I know, right?
Like when they happen.
Tentacles and
it's
toothpaste,
crazy.
Man. That's literally what I said when I got back from it.
I think I think I saw a similar thing one time. It looked like tentacles. I think I told you that before, but I've never made a comparison like toothpaste. Like,
yeah, well, it's because it had
toothpaste.
the smoothness of toothpaste.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you get that perfect, like the commercial, like the perfect just little.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like. Yeah, and it was like a whole wall of it, and it was weird. So we blasted off a few times. And the first time that I went, it was like I saw that, and I felt like I was just like looking at a wall. Like I didn't feel like I was in the room. It just seemed like I was just looking at shit, like almost as if it was on a screen, but that I was there. And I didn't see an entity, but I felt the entity. I felt its presence, and I was like, all right. It's directing my attention. It's like, look at this, but it's not saying look at this. It just is like implied that I'm supposed to look at these things and change my gaze and look like, oh, look over here, and I'll look over here. And each time I'm seeing a new mind-blowing thing, and this thing is fucking just like laughing. This thing is having so much fun, this entity, just blowing my mind. Like, look at this simple little monkey. Like, let me just blow this monkey's mind. You know, like babies with little toys, you know, like they're just like, yay. And it's something so simple to us. But, you know, and to them, maybe what they see is so simple. They're like, yeah, the fractals are like, wow, look at how amazed he is by this shit. And this thing pumps me filled. It's funny that I didn't release the other one because we talked about it. But we talked about it for the whole podcast, which is why I didn't want to release it. I was like, well, we should talk about some other shit too. But I don't mind talking about it on this. So I'm seeing all this beautiful stuff. And then finally it's like, and guess what? We're all love. And it sent me the best feeling you've ever felt in your entire life, like times 1,000. And it sent it to me over and over and over again. Like I felt like I was getting my tank overfilled. And it just kept pouring into me this infinite love of just like the best feeling ever, dude. Yeah.
Solid Bay your ass.
Yeah. And it's like, here's some more love. And just when you think you can't take any more, here's more love. And it just kept fucking pumping me with this shit. And I was like, I was like, apparently, according to Joey, I was just sitting there laughing and cheesing, just like the biggest grin on my face he's ever seen. Yeah. Just enjoying this being pumped full of love.
The feeling I had, and it like relates with love. I think it's the same thing, honestly. Like the feeling I had after my like really big like DMT trip when like I went somewhere. I talked to some things and I saw some things dance, and I saw some things like warn me about like my own intention and stuff like that.
Be careful what you wish for, man.
Yeah, dude.
That's a huge lesson that I learned from
like,
that.
It literally told me like, you can have whatever you want, like, but are you sure though? It's kind of like, if you want it, I'll give it to you, but like, are you sure you know what you're asking for? And that's it. And there's no remorse on that side. Yeah. Or like anything like that.
No, hey,
it's
you
like,
asked for it. This is what you asked for.
Here you go.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like me, like giving a kitten what it wants. Like, you sure you want this toy? All right.
All right. Here you go.
And then if you choke on it, like, bye.
Bye. See ya.
Yeah. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Like our human concepts don't exist with those things. But like my feeling was like, I just don't want to forget it. My feeling was this like I was oversaturated with like gratitude, and it was fucking incredible. I've never felt that much gratitude before. I've been like really appreciative of things, but like I even made this meme. I think it's still on my Instagram. It's like, it's really stupid, but like I got up in the morning. First of all, I didn't sleep the whole night, but I got up in the morning. I went to Lake Michigan. I watched the sunrise. I had some Whoppers from Burger King, 2 for $6 deal. That shit's
Nice.
the best.
Nice.
Dude. And like, I literally had this like epiphany, like, dude, like I have a choice about everything. And there's so much at your leisure. It's like incredible. Well, first of all, I drove my fucking spaceship, you know, to the lake. And I can choose, maybe I'll go to work and drive for Uber. Maybe I'll go paint or whatever, like, or go on a date with, you know what I'm saying? Like, we constantly have like this leisure of choice.
Yeah.
And like this leisure of choice, it's like, it's fucking incredible. It's all of a sudden you have like this massive power. Massive
Power, dude. Massive power.
What 4 times I said in this episode. I'm proud of myself.
I know,
I
dude.
love empowering words, man. Hey, speaking of languages, I feel like we should almost Google this. I think it was like a TEDx. And this woman was talking about how different languages, how they're structured, literally designs and like governs how you think. Because like the way you describe things, it guides how you think about it, and then how you see it in the world. And like, you know, like different languages literally like can mean completely different things, and it changes how people see reality.
It does.
And other people, like that's
and
fucking
learning,
crazy.
So I can say confidently, like,
Because like with words we designate shit, you know.
Yeah, well,
not to interrupt you, but like
we're putting a label on things. And so like I've learned from learning Spanish, like I've learned so much about how there are so many different ways that we can describe the exact same things, and those descriptions often come with certain preconceived notions of things based on how language has formed, based on the agreed upon things that each person within that language has all agreed. Well, yeah, when we say lit, it means lit, you know?
Yeah.
We don't just mean lighting a candle. It also now means like getting lit.
all these other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it links some meaning to it.
It links some meaning to it. And so then if there different cultures have different ways of linking meanings to different things. And so you end up the same object can have multiple meanings, multiple links. So I just thought that was, you know, that was like it's such an interesting thing, is like how language fucking forms your reality and how it changes everything.
Yeah, it totally conditions you.
And one of the things, because I don't want to forget, because I did, now that I talked about the DMT trip, I have to say one of the other big lessons I learned from that first blast off, and I'll go more into detail on another episode on this, but one of the biggest things that I learned was like enjoy the moment, trust the process, just keep going with it. Because every time I try to be like, oh, what am I going to bring back? I can't wait to talk about this on the podcast. What am I going to say? Wait, what was the big lesson here? You know, like, yeah, infinite love. Yeah. And it was so funny how casually I immediately after getting pumped full of it was so casually dismissing it, like, yeah, because I already knew it from a previous psychedelic experiences. I had that kind of feeling, not on that level of intensity, but the premise was already kind of like, I already believed that. And so it was just like, I was like, yeah, enough of that. But like, you know, like, what's the lesson I'm supposed to bring back? Like, you know, what am I supposed to do? And immediately this thing, which was communicating to me via these robotic synthy sounds, similar to my mushroom trip, where it was like spaceship sounds, like, and it was like giving me like hot or cold. Yeah, the whole time. I don't know if you have auditory hallucinations, but the whoa time it was like, whoa.
I've had that.
Yeah, it was like that the whole time, and then occasionally I could hear this thing communicating to me, which I didn't see. I didn't see an entity on this one, but I did feel its presence, and I heard this synthy sound that to me sounded like, you know, you're getting warmer or you're getting colder. There was no English involved.
Do you think on that thing you're describing, do you think that could have been like a thing that's external from you, like another entity, or that could have been you, or, you know, like observing either yourself or like being your own guide?
And I don't know. That's the funny thing, is that
that's not to like argue the other thing. Like, it could be totally it. I'm just like curious.
No, 100%. I don't know whether what I talk to is myself or an entity. But one of the things you learn from these type of experiences is that we are all the same thing. We're just subjectively experiencing it in separate bodies. But like, I'm you and you're me. The same way that the fucking squirrels down the street are also us. The same way that the planet is us, the same way that the sun is us. Everything in the cosmos is all the same thing. It's all made of atoms. It's all made of electrons, protons, neutrons, all these things that we've given labels to. But these are all just organizations, various degrees of complexity, various degrees of size and scale, but it's all really the same thing being expressed in a bunch of shapes. And it's helpful for us to classify certain subcategories and whatnot. But in reality, we're really all the same thing. And so the question, am I talking to myself with this, or is it literally another entity, is almost a question that doesn't need to be asked, because it's clearly all the same thing. Now, did I feel like I was talking to another inner subjective version of myself? Yeah. It didn't feel like it was me. It felt like it was this other thing, even though we are all the same thing. And I understood that we were all the same thing, but that thing felt separate of me
What do
I'm
you mean
still
the same thing? No.
meaning the same, like all of the universe is the same thing.
Meaning like it's made out of the same stuff? Or
whatever space and matter and all of that, and dark matter, dark energy. It's all the same thing.
I think of it like this. I think it's like it all comes from the same thing, which is like the source, like source.
The source,
energy.
yes.
I think it all comes from the same thing, but like we still see like variations. Like
no, for sure. But
is the finger me, or is the finger just a finger away from me? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
like,
as much you as everything.
It's like it's like a different part of the same thing. I think if it's all like, if we're all the same thing, I think we're different parts of the same thing, which is completely.
But that is what I'm saying. Like, is I'm saying that we're
different everywhere.
We're subjectively experiencing it differently, because I'm experiencing it in this body called Kevin, according to my parents, and you're experiencing it as Michael. But in reality, if we pull out the scope and when we are like our eternal selves, we see that is all really us. But we're choosing to inhabit this form, which is in and of itself separate from the subjective point of view. But if you pull out on the larger scale,
layers and layers and layers.
Yeah.
That's what I saw when I was on DMT. I was like, dude, everything is layers.
Yes. Infinite layers of fractals of, it's unbelievable.
It felt like it was all just kind of like coming out here. Like reality could just infinitely kept like being printed on a printing press. Just
yeah, definitely.
It's crazy.
Definitely. There's so many levels and layers, and it was by far the most profound experience I ever had, ever. Period. Highest point I've ever felt, ever. Period. Now, don't take DMT lightly. But I will say that I had nothing but positive experience. I didn't have a single negative experience on it.
I think what's cool about DMT is that like in the process there isn't a feeling, unless it's like a really weak hit. Like there isn't a feeling of like a time duration. Like there's no kind of time in the process, even though it was only like 15 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
But like
you're not thinking about time.
Yeah, you remember that later.
Yeah.
Or like if you
which I will say, it did feel short. Like afterwards, not while I'm in it, but afterwards, it did feel like that wasn't long.
Yeah, but like during the process, it doesn't feel that way.
You're not thinking about it.
Yeah. Like if you take mushrooms or something, sometimes you're like, I wish this lasted a little bit longer. I'm starting to come down.
That's where acid gets it a little bit. But it's funny because like that's sometimes people's complaint about acid is that it's too long, and so then you have to throw away more than the whole day. It's like a day and a half because of recovery.
Is that there are so many options.
I know there are if you can find them, which of course we can't and we don't have it. But But it is interesting to see the differences in how different things like your mushroom trips. I think mushrooms will show you something that acid can't, in the same way that acid will show you something that mushrooms can't. It's just a different point of view. It's a different perspective, and that different perspective is going to show you different blind spots, because no one perspective, sober, meditative, psychedelic, no one state can see everything. So you kind of have to, that's why I'm a huge fan of altering my consciousness, because it allows me to see from so many different angles.
I think this is like an interesting point though, because like you see what you're constantly like creating there. Like we made like a full circle. So it's like at some point, like when you start deliberately, thinking deliberately, deliberately desire,
living living consciously, living with a purpose, doing things that you want to do, avoiding things you don't want to do.
Yeah. Then you're in that constant like high momentum state, and you feel that way all the time. And I think that's awesome,
dude. I've been in this sustained high period for now. It's like I don't know, like a month and a half, almost 2 months of just like consistently feeling just generally good. Feeling generally like, you know what, my life is going the right direction. I'm okay if this takes forever.
That's a good feeling.
Like, yeah, it's a great feeling. It's so freeing. I used to be so attached to results, and I used to so want, like, I want things now, right? I wanted things now. I didn't want to keep doing, the 9 to 5 life. and which is I don't in the long run, but I now have more patience for it to help me manifest the irregular lifestyle that I'm trying to manifest in my world.
Yeah, dude.
But it's taught me this patience in a way that I used to be in a rush before because I felt like I was getting left behind. And it's because I spent a whole year at home where I felt like I couldn't do anything that it had me in that state where I felt trapped. And so in order to make up for it, when I first moved here to Chicago, I fucking busted my ass so hard to the point where I burned myself out. It wasn't sustainable. I didn't have my mental health figured out too. And I wasn't being as mindful. I was being just in this like go mode, this Gary V like never take a day off mode, and that doesn't work. Guy. I love Gary V, and I've talked about him with Jerry on the podcast already. But for me, it's like you're a slave to then the job, and that's not all that you are.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like it's like per preference, and like Gary V, like he's constantly just like an amped up mode. Like he's such a fucking intense dude. I love that guy, and I love the positive content he always puts out.
For sure, he's definitely in that like, positive.
That's totally him, and I don't think that it's like a critical thing, like being critical of him or anything that like what you're saying. I think it's like perfectly cool that's like not your preference.
Yeah, it's not my preference. If
everybody's
it works for him,
so different.
If it works for him, then it works for him, and maybe he is totally well rounded. And I just don't know it. But to me, it seems like a little too much focused on the job. But like you said, everybody has a different preference and a different balance.
Everybody has like a different energy level too. Like I definitely could not handle that right now.
Yeah.
Like I believe that I can like train myself. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I definitely.
We got to go in the hyperbolic time chamber and fucking power up, dude. We got to master
whatever
Super Saiyan.
The fuck it takes, man. Let's go. I'm ready.
I'm so excited. Did you watch a lot of Dragon Ball at all as a kid?
I did, but like I don't remember much.
I am so excited for the new Broly movie. The animation looks so good. Although I will say they spoiled a little too much in the last trailer. But no, I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, so for me, like Dragon Ball, like that's like a good metaphor that I use all the time of like thinking about like going Super Saiyan. Like there's a certain degree where you finally hit this new power level and you're able to maintain it. And at first it's unstable. At first you can only hold Super Saiyan for a little bit. And when I consider Psychedelics my introduction to Super Saiyan. And when I first got to Super Saiyan, I would power up and I would do it for a while, but then it would burn out my stamina. I would get tired. I would hit a roadblock, and then I wouldn't be able to go Super Saiyan for a while. I
feel like whatever like personal power you find, like you have to learn to...
You have to learn to hold it and wield it. Yeah, for sure.
Totally. So it's controlled but sustainable too.
Exactly.
So you don't burn out too much.
Exactly.
Or like,
But I had to burn out and
stagnate.
like you said, fail. I had to fail and I had to get stuck a couple times in order for me to now I feel like I've mastered Super Saiyan. Meaning I feel like I now know how to keep this more or less
shit up now.
Yeah, more or less sustained, like destroying the earth, spirit bombing motherfuckers.
Whatever you got to do, man.
Kamehameha, dude. I'll just...
It's all about being true to you, man.
It's over 9,000. All right. So anyway, like I feel like I've hit a point for my own level of Super Saiyan, and I know how to hold it and power it up. And I know that there's a level beyond it. I know that Super Saiyan 2 exists. And I am striving to get there, but I'm totally happy with my current mastery of Super Saiyan 1.
Yeah.
You know? There are other levels.
You'll eventually get to whatever level like that you've envisioned.
But that's the part about Super Saiyan 1 is that that's what you realize is that like you already, once you've proven you can master this level, you know that it's just a matter of time and training to reach the Super Saiyan 2. And so when you get to this point where...
It's an analogy that's like made in like traditional martial arts and stuff like that. Like because people walk in as beginners like... Dude, man, it's one day I'm going to get the black belt, man. I'm going to be awesome. And
I'm going to just be able to fuck people up.
Yeah, and then when people get to black belt, like their teacher tells them, like, so congrats, you've gotten a grasp on your basics. Now, like, the real journey begins. Like, you know what I mean? That's like a perspective changer, dude. It's a like, constant learning process.
Well, it's like in Mastery. In Mastery, Robert Greene's book, he talks about the different phases, like where you're in the beginning phase, the apprenticeship phase, then the creative passive maybe, and then the creative active. I can't remember all the names he gave it.
Yeah, it's almost like stages of
But they were stages of understanding. So the first thing is
and then applying it too.
And yes, well,
that's like the essence of education.
You get to a point where you understand the rules well enough in your craft, in your art, and whatever that is, that then you begin to use your imagination and start repurposing, and you pull things from other disciplines in ways that only you can. And that is how masters mastered more than one element, is that those other elements ended up helping them master the others. The same way that learning a language, now that we're fucking coming full circle, baby. I know. Well, it's just funny when it does that, but when you learn a language, then the next language that you learn after you finally figured it out, you've then understood the first language you knew better, and then if you were to try to learn a third language, you have 2 reference points now to work from.
Dude, this is crazy. We were connected through some cloud, some fucking Apple cloud or whatever. Okay, so these guys don't know. I drive Uber full time, and then I do my artwork and stuff. So I was having the same conversation. Did we talk about this before? I don't think so.
I don't know.
I was having a conversation with some people in my Uber 2 or 3 days ago, and it was literally about language. And then they said something wow, you barely have any accent, because I was born in Ukraine.
Yeah.
But I feel I do a little bit now. After I got hit in the head in a car accident, I mumble, and sometimes my shit comes out with an accent,
Yeah, a little
either
bit.
Ukrainian or Canadian. People think I'm Canadian.
I could see the Canadian. I could definitely see the Canadian.
Yeah,
Canadian,
I do that.
Legal weed.
Hey, man. Legal weed,
Legal weed,
So anyway,
Vancouver.
And we were talking about it the same way, that it's easier after... I said those words to my passenger.
Yeah, there you go, dude.
Dude, I literally said.
Well, it's because it's true.
Yeah, 2 reference points that expands your
But then
scope.
the same thing applies in disciplines that seem unrelated. So if you got really good at painting and then you decided to branch into filmography, which is something that I know you want to get into, what you learn from film will then inform your paintings, which will then re-inform your film. Right? And they end up then dual feeding off each other. You will see things from a perspective that only somebody who's learned both disciplines can. And the more disciplines that you learn, the more that you can learn, the better you get at each individual one, and the more you can separate yourself from others by having an even more unique perspective.
Yeah.
And we are all shaped by the various things that we consume in our lives, information, skill sets, practices, whatever. All of those things are going to make something uniquely you. And the more that you embrace those things, the more that you become so you that no one else could do what you do.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's almost like learning algebra first and then getting to the point where you can make algorithms and those 2 things, and now you can pretty much build the entire functionality of a company, or Google or something like that, or Google Maps.
Yeah. Well, because the mathematics is important.
That's huge. It
then
fucking
learning
runs the
the
world.
Computer language is a separate thing, right?
Yeah.
Because there's multiple languages, multiple disciplines, and it literally is like learning a language. And then once you've combined those 2 minds, then you create something altogether.
Yeah, dude. You create all this shit that we have.
And as you learn different languages, even within computer code, that ideas that you might get from Java will be different than ideas that you get from Python or something else. Each thing will teach you in a new way because it will have certain constraints that force you to use those constraints to your advantage. And I really do believe that if you were just given all the equipment you could ever need for anything, you'd never learn anything, because you need the constraints, you need the lack of to force you to be creative, to then create content from a unique angle. It will end up forcing you to be more creative because you have less things to work with, and you have to work around those handicaps.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude.
Interesting.
See, and now I'm glad we did this
we
again.
Got a pretty dope podcast, dude.
But
Thanks,
I know we're
Grandma,
limited
for
on
calling.
time, dude, because I don't want to keep it way too long or anything. But
for sure, man. We'll do more.
But no, we'll definitely do more, and this was awesome. I really appreciated
Thanks,
it.
bro.
And Michael, thanks again for coming on,
inviting
dude.
me, dude.
I know we got to figure out a better way to do the handshake here with these arms. Yeah.
Air five.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. This was
man, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was the first guest video podcast. So imagine you guys are going to see more. So keep it up. All right, peace.